Well, hello, welcome to another in this series on Sikh Studies. This is really a remarkable webinar series that was conceived by Narendra Singh Kapani, who is the founder of the Sikh Foundation. And you wonder what I'm doing here is because I was asked to do this by Narendra. My name is Mark Juergensmeyer. I taught at Punjabi University many years ago, and I've been associated with Sikh Studies uh, all of my academic career. And about, 45 years ago, no, it's a long time. Narinder, both of us younger people then, said, look, we should have a conference on Sikh studies. So we launched the first ever conference on Sikh studies in North America. And out of that came a book on Sikh studies. And it was a kind of milestone in the formation of Sikh studies as an academic field. And so just a few weeks ago, shortly before his untimely death, right before Christmas, Narinder called me up and said, Mark, we should do it again. We should have another conference. But this time, since it's in the pandemic, we could only do it on Zoom. We're going to do a series of seminars with people all over North America and all over the world to see the state of Sikh studies. So that's what we're doing. That's why I'm here. I'm here at the bequest of Narinder Kapani, and it's in his memory that we have this wonderful series. So just telling this in case you missed the first two sessions with Anshu Malhotra and Peshawar Singh, both at the University of California. And now we're going all the way across the ocean to a wonderful center and a wonderful person, Opinderjit Kaur Takhar at the University of Wolverhampton. And Opinderjit, usually we start with breaking news, what's going on and what's really exciting. I mean, please tell me if there's something coming up that we should all know about, but what's really thrilling to me is the fact that you have a Center for Sikh and Panjabi Studies. I know it was a couple of years ago that it was founded, but it was the first of its kind in the UK. And so how's it going?
Yeah, it's all going very well, thanks, Mark. As you said, this is the first and the only academic centre for Sikh and Punjabi studies in the UK. Actually, I think it's the only one across the whole of Europe. So there's been lots of interest in there, lots of exciting stuff that's already happened and is in the pipelines as well. It's great to see the kind of the support of the wider community that we've had for the Centre for Sikh and Punjabi Studies as well. So all in all, it's going really well.
Anything coming up that we should know about? This is your chance to let everybody know.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we're working on a number of projects with a couple of universities in Punjab. At the moment, we are putting together various research bids, etc. So over the coming months, hopefully we'll be in a position to announce the kind of research that we're doing there. So the Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies, we visited the Punjab with the Vice Chancellor of the university in 2019. And as a result, we've signed memorandums of understanding with all of the premier institutions in Punjab, including Guru Nanak Dev University in Amritsar, Punjabi University Patiala, Punjab University Chandigarh, a number of Khalsa colleges, including Ludhiana, Guru Tegh Bahadur Khalsa College in Delhi. And there's a few more that's in the pipelines as well. And I think a lot of the interest in the centre is the fact that, the Sikhs have such a long history here in the UK. And it's very much about time that this centre was a long time coming. And, I'm glad to say that the community have kind of really given it a very warm welcome overall.
Well, that's really impressive. A lot of people, maybe people in the United States are saying, why Wolverhampton? We don't even know where Wolverhampton is. Well, I know where Wolverhampton is. I've been there, and I know that it has a large diaspora community, which is why I went there in the first place. But can you tell us why Wolverhampton? Is that just because of you happen to be there, or is there something special about the place and about the university?
Well, I guess it's a bit of both, really. So here in the UK, Sikh studies isn't, it's not as developed as it is there in the States. I mean, I think you have something like 7 or 8 Sikh studies chairs in the States. So partly it's due to the fact that that is my discipline, Sikh studies is, but more than that, it's down to the fact that Wolverhampton actually has the second largest population of Sikhs in the UK outside of Hounslow in West London. And it's for that very reason, actually, that the university, the vice chancellor of the university especially, he felt that, you know, we should actually take advantage of the fact that the university is amidst this huge Sikh community. Punjabi is actually the second most spoken language in Wolverhampton.
Wow.
And on my last count, I think there was 14 gurdwara just in the region of Wolverhampton. So it made sense for us to start exploring what the viability of such a centre would be. So we did some ground research, we did some ground mapping, etc. And we found that actually it was the perfect place. And Wolverhampton is so accessible in terms of, you know, people being able to get to Wolverhampton. And for that reason, it's the ideal place really to have a Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies, because it caters to the wider community. So more than being an academic centre, it's also one that really places value on community engagement, and that community is, you know, with the regional, the national, but also the international Sikh community as well.
Well, it sounds like this was long overdue to have a center like this. And so do you work with other universities in the UK as well?
There are various colleagues who are in the other universities here in the UK, but in the sense of, you know, kind of an established Sikh studies, as I said, we don't really have anything up until now. We didn't have anything in the UK, you know, or even on undergraduate courses. You know, there's a module here or a module there in universities. We also have the taught MA Sikh studies as part of the centre as well. So for that reason, yes, you know, various colleagues, you know, do some work relating to the Sikhs. And so when the centre was launched, you know, and in the work up towards launching the centre, you know, having conversations with all those colleagues, inviting them to the launch, helping them gain a better perspective into what we could do. And since then, yes, you know, we've been working, you know, various projects, various publications are in the pipelines as well. You know, and you yourself know that, you know, these things take time sometimes, you know, to get them out there.
Sure. I mean, there was a time when UK was kind of regarded as a very important center for Sikh studies. You know, when Christopher Shackle was in his prime at SOAS, the London School of Oriental and African Studies. I mean, his Punjabi grammar and handbook is kind of a pure standard for studying the field. Is Punjabi still taught throughout UK?
It's kind of almost in the realm of kind of community classes at the moment. So I'm not really aware of any Punjabi courses at university level. You know, although
Wow. Even at Wolverhampton, you don't teach Punjabi?
We don't teach the Punjabi language per se, but this is something that was supposed to be introduced this year, as in, you know, in the academic year, but because of COVID, we've had to kind of put a bit of a pause on things. But that is definitely something that's in the pipelines. And this is one of the projects that we're working with, especially at Patiala, Punjabi University in Patiala. You know, they've developed the Gurmukhi font, etc. So, you know, we work and kind of, you know, liaise very closely, you know, especially with Gurpreet Lahal. And so, yeah, that is one of the goals, is to start the Punjabi. It'll probably be an MA in Punjabi that we'll start here, a master's.
Well, that's wonderful. Again, long overdue. But if somebody wants to study Punjabi, what do they do?
Well, a number of schools, especially in kind of, you know, highly Sikh populated areas, do actually offer GCSE and A-level Punjabi. So GCSE, you know, what age are they? 14 to 16-year-olds would take GCSE, and then 16 to 19-year-olds take the A-level option. But I mean, obviously, mature students can take those at various colleges, etc. Most of the larger gurdwara that I know also offer Punjabi, you know, at kind of very basic level, but also at those kind of official qualification levels of GCSE and A-level as well. But as I said, this is something that we feel as a centre that there is a need for it, especially in and around Wolverhampton. But in this day and age, it can be kind of, virtual learning, distance learning. So that is something that we're working on at the moment, is to get that validated, and so we can start teaching it then, hopefully in the next academic year.
Wonderful. So, I mean, it seems like the Gurdwaras are kind of picking up the slack in this area, where clearly there's a need. I can imagine that there would be a huge demand for it. But sometimes academic institutions, as you know, can be terribly conservative. They don't change very easily. And to try to get them to change is sometimes it takes an outside infusion of money or interest. Was that the case in the Center for Sikh and Panjabi Studies at Wolverhampton? Did you raise money from the community, or did the university provide the funds on their own?
The university has 100% funded the centre. So this is again, the kind of the vision of the university was to really have the local community, which is heavily Sikh populated, Punjabi populated, to feel a part of the university. And for that reason, the centre it's 100% funded by the university. And we've had so much support, even with the MA Sikh Studies, getting that validated, getting it out there. It wasn't a struggle at all, because we have the ear of the people at the top of the university, in the sense that they value, and because we work so closely with the local community, but also with the national community as well. The Gurdwara have shown their support. We have an advisory board for the centre as well, on which a number of kind of national organisations involved with Gurdwara are also there as well. So in that sense, it's very much the centre is very much like a partnership between the community and the academic side of things. So it's very much about listening to what are the issues, the challenges, the needs of the community, and then actually doing something about it. So yes, of course, publications, etc., are very important in that. But for me, a publication, be it a book or an article, it has to make an impact on the community that we're researching. So it has to be about those issues that actually matter to the community. And for that reason, we have a number of events. We have had a number of events where it's very community focused. And because of that, it's the university can see how much value that adds, in the sense of being a part of that community as well.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. And you're right, it makes all the difference in the world to have administrators who see the vision of this and who see the value of this. And of course, in your case, you've shown the value of it. You've shown how it can have an impact both academically and also to raise the profile of the university within the community and show that it has a real relevance. I have a lot more questions. I know other people do too, and we're going to save those questions till a little bit later on in our discussion. And so if there's anybody watching this who has a question, there's a Q&A section on your Zoom screen. You can just post the questions, and then when we come to the question and answer time, I'll quickly look through those and we'll answer as many as we can. I'll ask as many as I can, and Opinderjit can decide how much she wants to answer, or if she wants to answer. I'm sure there'll be good questions, but we'll save those for later on. So getting back to your center, so before you established the center, I mean, of course, you taught Sikh Studies at Wolverhampton, or were there actually courses in Sikh Studies that were taught?
So when I started at the University of Wolverhampton, my position was in the area known as religious studies. So at Wolverhampton at that time, and we still do, we have a undergraduate, a BA honours in religious studies. I was very fortunate in the sense that when I started there, I had the luxury of picking and choosing which modules I wanted to teach. And so the Sikhi module was already there. It was something that used to be taught by Juergensmeyer, who's written a lot of in the study of religion. So it actually, when he retired, it's his position that I got. So I had the luxury then of teaching the Indian religions. And then within that whole kind of module diet, Sikhi was it was one module within that. But then what we found is that that was the first contact that so many students actually had academically with the Sikh faith. You know, and we're not just talking about Sikh or South Asian students here, we're also talking about, you know, non-Sikh students who absolutely found it fascinating that even in school, they learnt the very bare kind of, you know, facts, the very basic facts about Sikhi. And so, you know, in the final year, students do their dissertation, do their thesis at undergraduate level. And year after year, I found that more and more students wanted to concentrate on Sikh issues, which was absolutely fascinating. And then essentially what that means now is that right through from undergraduate level, we still have that module in the BA undergraduate studies on Sikhi, and then students can go and do a whole dissertation at undergraduate level if they want. So that's at undergraduate level. Then at master's level, we've got the Sikh studies, which is actually, I think it's the only taught MA Sikh studies in the UK. But then we go beyond that, and we actually have 5 PhD students in Sikh studies as well.
Oh.
And all 5 are Punjabi, and all but 1 are female Sikh Panjabi students as well. So, you know, in effect, Sikh studies at Wolverhampton is right from undergraduate right through to PhD level at the moment.
Is Wolverhampton the only university where you can get a PhD in Sikh studies, or can you do that at other UK universities?
You can do it at the UK universities as well. It depends on if the expertise is there in terms of supervision. So, for example, when I did my PhD quite a long time ago now, at that time, Sikh studies, it was here in the UK, but it wasn't very developed. So we had pioneers, and my PhD supervisor was actually Dr. Owen Cole, you know, one of the first non-Sikhs here in the UK, you know, along with Professor Eleanor Nesbitt, who actually, you know, really, you know, they really flew the flag for Sikh and Punjab studies here in the UK. So yeah, so, you know, in terms of studying it, you know, you can take a Sikh studies PhD virtually anywhere as long as the expertise is in there. And, you know, in our first couple of years of the centre, we have 5, which is great, and it shows the interest actually from within the Sikh community as well. I mean, you know, when I did my PhD, there were just a few of us. I think there were about 3 or 4 of us across the whole of the UK who actually were taking Sikh studies as our discipline. But to see now a growing number of Sikh studies PhDs, it's great. And it's great to see that so many Sikh students are taking those studies as well, which is, you know, a few years' time, we'll have so much more research, so much more literature out there as well.
And on what fields are they focusing? What are their projects?
So we've got a number of fields. So there's one that's focusing on, you know, where and why are the barriers there in the Sikh community in terms of seeking help for mental health issues. Another one is looking at the issue of alcohol abuse in the Punjabi Sikh community amongst males and females. There's one that's looking at how media and how social pressure influence body image among South Asians generally, but Sikhs specifically. The other student, she's having a look at more kind of political issues. And then we have another student who is looking at musicology. So she's having a look at the whole Geethpan emphasis here in the UK and how Geethpan, you know, affects Sikhs themselves. So her study is more of an auto-ethnography study. You know, so these are kind of, you know, this is we know we all have anecdotal you know, ideas of, you know, about, you know, mental health, etc., in the Sikh community. But what these 5 PhDs will do, they will actually give the research-based kind of statistics data out there to be able to share with others.
So, I mean, today we're putting the spotlight on Wolverhampton, but if you want to if you want to work on Sikh studies, what other universities in the UK would one consider? What is this a possibility?
As I said, in terms of a taught MA Sikh studies, you know, in the sense that, you know, there are taught modules all the way through, and then a dissertation. I believe we're the only one. I think at the University of Birmingham there's an MRes in Sikh Studies, which is kind of more research based. You know, maybe I don't quite know how that is compiled. And I believe there's something down at SOAS with Gurharbal being there, but I'm not very familiar with what that encompasses. I think that's within a wider Indian religions kind of an emphasis.
Do they still teach Punjabi at SOAS?
I don't know, Mark. I know Christopher Shackle. I think he retired a few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just wondering whether he was replaced and whether they kept that tradition alive.
I know that Gurharbal he's now got the professorship in Sikh and Panjabi Studies.
Right. Yes, I'm in contact with him. I know he's doing well. So there's an opportunity for if people want to study at someplace other than Wolverhampton. I can't imagine why you would want to do Sikh studies anywhere else other than Wolverhampton.
Absolutely.
But just in case.
Absolutely, we're the place to go for Sikh studies.
Well, it sounds like it. And you know, one of the reasons why I asked you what people are doing their work on is that one of the questions that I ask every one of our guests in this webinar series is what Sikh studies includes, because when we first had our conference back in 1976 on Sikh studies, I guess most of us thought of Sikh studies as a study of Sikh history and of scripture. You know, a very kind of a narrow and traditional view of what Sikh studies was. And that if you didn't do that, then then you weren't. I mean, you might do later Sikh history. You could, you know, move into Ranjit Singh or even study the Singh Sabha. But all of these other issues having to do with sociology and community and diaspora and what you're talking about, a whole range of issues like personal identity and mental health and so forth. I find this really, really exciting, really impressive. And is that the way you see it? That Sikh studies and the study of Sikhi is really a big tent?
Absolutely. There's so many different elements and there's so many different kind of disciplines that you can include within Sikh studies. So, you know, of course, the historical, the textual element is very important because there's always new information to unearth from those, you know, from those texts, etc. But for me personally, it's a lot more than that. It's very much about the lived experience. It's very much about contemporary themes. So, you know, it's not just about studying Sikhi, but it's about studying the Sikhs as well, you know, in the sense of, you know, what's happening right now on the ground. You know, take mental health for example. You know, this is a topic that's so discussed, especially, you know, in light of current circumstances. So, you know, in order to be able to really tap into contemporary issues, that kind of, you know, going away from the textbook is something that we very much emphasize at Wolverhampton, right through from undergraduate level, right through, because, you know, if we just kind of confine ourselves to textbook representations of Sikhi, textbook representations of the Sikhs, then actually that doesn't really address diversity. It doesn't actually address, you know, diversity in beliefs and practices, etc. And again, in that element, you know, when we're talking about lived Sikhi, you know, we can find Sikhi in our kitchens in the sense of what we cook, when we cook it. We can very much find Sikhi in the kitchen of the Gurdwara. That is where the principles of Sikhi are lived down. You know, so again, you know, it's within that emphasis of contemporary right now, what's happening, what matters, what new knowledge can we offer about what's happening now. I feel that especially the British Sikh community, you know, people want answers. They want statistical, research-based answers to kind of try and find solutions to what we see as being gaps in knowledge, or what we see as being those kind of pertinent areas that we really need to address. So yeah, so for me, you know, in a lot of the work that I do, it's not historical based. It's not necessary. Of course, some element of textual studies always has to come into it. But beyond that, for me, it's about now, what's happening now.
So if a student wanted to do Guru Granth Sahib studies or study the Dasam Granth or others early texts, uh, that's great. And you would have the resources. Of course, that gets into all kinds of linguistic issues and having that kind of sophistication to deal with early Punjabi and Braj and all the other languages that might be involved, right?
Absolutely. And actually this is again, this is something that's in the pipelines at the moment. So this is something that we're just writing a proposal for at the moment, is how working with institutions in Punjab, such as at Patiala, how we can create some kind of a resource through which students can engage with those textual sources. So by all means, if a student wanted to concentrate on Guru Granth Sahib or on Dasam Granth, or even if students want to concentrate on some kind of literary aspect, we have sometimes there's that whole issue of if it's in the Sharmukhi script, those who are proficient in Gurmukhi script and vice versa have difficulty in that. So again, this is a project that we're currently we're writing a proposal on, and I'm pretty confident that it will get funded by one of the research councils that we have here in the UK. And that will be very exciting because we can then take that out, not just on an academic level, but we can take it out to Gurdwara, we can take it out to community organisations, across the world. It doesn't limit us just to the UK, in the sense that, if you really want to find the beauty of something, you have to go back to the original, because something always gets lost in translation. And if we can go back to the original, but then have the tools to really be able to look at that in depth, that I feel that's a huge gap, and something that hopefully we will be able to address with some funding.
Well, you're clearly very entrepreneurial and wonderful leadership, but I can't imagine you're doing this all by yourself. And do you have a faculty network that supports you and helps to provide, advice for? Are you the main mentor for all of these graduate students, or are there other faculty?
So I'm the director of studies for all 5, but the research teams are made up with 3 members of staff each. So for the 5 students, each team would be of 3 members of staff. So for example, with the student on mental health, say for example, 2 of the colleagues, one colleague is from public health at the university, the other colleague is from the Department of Psychology. And then again with the musicology, obviously I'm there for the Sikhi aspect of it, but there are colleagues who are experts in autoethnography as a research method, but then also from the discipline of musicology itself. So that's how we divide the supervision. It's one person can't possibly have all the expertise that's required for such an interdisciplinary work.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of energy, and I'm sure you can do a lot of, but maybe not everything, right?
You can't do everything.
Right. So 10 years from now, what would you like to see happen, not just at Wolverhampton, but throughout the UK?
I mean, it'd be great to have more of a stronger emphasis on Sikh studies here in the UK. To be able to follow in the footsteps of of the USA, where there's so much going on there, in the sense that because there are 7 or 8 chairs there, a lot of the conferences, etc. For example, Professor Pashara's conference, which takes place every 2 years, I regularly attend that one, and it'd be good if we can keep that kind of a momentum going on here. So in 2019 we had a huge conference here, which was the launching conference of the Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies, and that was a 3-day conference. Obviously it marked the 550th Gurpurb as well, but for the first time since 1999 in the UK, so 20 years later, what this conference did, it brought together scholars in Sikh studies from across the world, and that was absolutely amazing. So 10 years from now, I'd like that to be a regular kind of thing, and 10 years from now, the PhD students that we have, the other PhD students who will join, it's a whole new body of scholarship in Sikh studies, that we will have here in the UK, through publications, etc. And as Sikh studies it's still relatively new in the whole field of academia. I mean, at a push, I'd say it's probably 35, 40 years old, which is still very, very young. So we have a long way to go, but I'm hoping in 10 years' time, seeing the growing number of Sikh students that are now, engaging in Sikh studies. And it's not just about Sikh students, but it's about the wider community as well. So to be able to see non-Sikh students taking PhDs as well. And I know Prashara has had, Charles and Toby.
Right.
So it's already happening there. It'd be good for us to be able to replicate that in the UK as well.
That would be great. And before we go on the questions, which we do in a few minutes, I just wanted to ask a bit about your own personal research and how you got into this field. When you were a little girl, did you think, oh, gee, someday I'd like to start a Center for Sikh and Panjabi Studies at Wolverhampton, or did that kind of happen along the way?
It all happened along the way, Mark. So I grew up in a tiny little village in Wales. Where probably, our family was probably the only diversity for a 30-mile radius. Wow. We had no Gurdwara there. There was absolutely no Sikh community there. The closest Gurdwara that we had was 70 miles away. Wow. And so, at school, we used to learn, about, who the Sikhs are, etc. I knew a little bit about it, but, I don't come from a particularly religious family. So, we didn't really know much about Sikhi, but yeah. That really that really kind of it gave me a thirst for wanting to know more about my own faith. So at university I took undergraduate religious studies, and actually the external examiner for that was Owen Cole. This was at the University of Wales. So him being our external examiner, he kind of encouraged me to go on and take Sikh studies as my discipline. Which I ended up doing, taking a PhD with him in Sikh studies. And then Professor Gavin Flood was in Lampeter at that time. And then I got to teach his module on Sikhs at the University of Lampeter. And then from that, it kind of snowballed. And then I got this job at the University of Wolverhampton. And then one day, I had a meeting, with the senior management, with the Vice Chancellor especially, and he said, how about we explore the possibility of a Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies here? Wow, yeah, absolutely. And then there's no looking back from there, really.
Well, you've obviously done a lot with your career, and you just created just such a wonderful center at Wolverhampton, and we're looking forward to even greater things to come. Now, we have a bunch of questions that have cropped up. So let me just kind of quickly look through some of them. Somebody said that you were Lord Ranbir Suri is joined our webinar. Do you want to say a word about Lord Suri?
Yes, it's great to have you join us there, Lord Suri. Thank you so much for being here. Lord Suri is actually one of the patrons of the centre as well. So we have some patrons of the centre, but we also have an advisory group as well. So welcome, Lord Suri. Great to see you here.
We don't have lords in the United States, so just the idea of it is kind of impressive to me. That you would have a lord show up in a webinar. I'm kind of impressed. And even better that he would be supporting your center. That's really exciting. So I have a number of questions. Some about the young Sikh youths and whether they are is disassociated with the Gurdwaras, whether they are they feel an alienation from the Gurdwaras. Can you say something about that? That the younger generation, are they kind of reassessing and reattached to the tradition, or are they abandoning it? And is this an issue?
I mean, there's no straightforward answer to that in the sense of one fits all. So through the centre, we've been doing some groundwork, some kind of pilot work, as it were, in order to address, basically to what level is the younger generation engaging with the Gurudwara. And a substantial amount of that kind of, underlying research has shown that more and more of the youngsters who actually can't speak Punjabi are having some difficulty in the sense of making kind of making the best of their time at the gurdwaras. And again, this is where, developing tools around Punjabi, developing tools around understanding the Guru Granth Sahib, its message, is very important. And it's also a number of the youngsters have felt that, they don't always have the opportunity to be able to engage in kind of, a critical discussions at the Gurdwaras. Very often, some of the youngsters that we've interviewed have said that they would like to have more forums, more kind of open forums in places like Gurdwara or other kind of, community, youth clubs, etc., where they can actually really engage with Sikhi in the sense of what matters to them. For example, current issues, how if they can't speak Punjabi or can't understand Punjabi, how can they kind of, make the most of the message of what Sikhi has to say. So yeah, absolutely. It depends also of where you are, I guess. Some of the larger Gurdwaras are addressing the needs of the younger Gurdwara, the younger generation. But as a centre, this is something that we're working on in the sense of how can we have kind of almost kind of learning and teaching styles that we can adopt across Gurdwaras to cater for the younger generation. So this is an issue, I feel, in the sense that, we want the youngsters to keep engaging with the Gurdwaras, but there has to be something at the Gurdwaras that kind of pulls them in. What them wanting to voluntarily go to the Gurdwaras is very important.
There's a number of questions about whether people from outside can take any of these courses, or are they closed just to students at Wolverhampton?
No, absolutely. Anybody can take these courses. They're not just restricted to Wolverhampton students. We have a centre website where you can get in touch with us. The centre website gives you more information. And as and when these courses start to develop, as and when we start to develop the MA Panjabi Studies, the various other projects that we're trying to do, we'll be putting them on the centre website. And, we have social media as well. So the centre's Twitter account, for example, will give you up-to-date information on what's available and basically what we're doing as well.
There's one question that I don't understand because it's asking about, where is that question? The things I'm from the US, I don't know what a GCSE and A level are in Punjabi. They want to know whether your center is approved for conducting whatever those things are. And if so, the questioner says you can offer Singh Sabha Derby to be a part of the center for exams. So
wow.
That's a very particular question. So I don't know whether you want to answer or not. I don't even know what this is.
Oh yes, please. I'd love to answer that one. So thank you, Singh Sabha Derby, for offering that to us. So basically what the GCSE and A level are, Mark, they are the official qualifications that children in schools would get. I don't even know what the equivalent in the US is, but here when kids leave school at the age of 16, they would have sat their GCSEs, and if they want to return back to do a higher further study, that's where the A level comes in. So if we could be an established registered centre for that in collaboration with yourselves, Singh Sabha Derby, that would be absolutely fantastic, and we can carry on this conversation outside of this. But that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe we can put your address up, or they can probably find the website just by.
Or my email address, Mark. Put that into there as well. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So there are questions about whether the Indian consulate or Indian government has been supportive in any way of your center, or not, but that hasn't been.
We've had support of a number of organisations. As a university, we work with everybody. I think maybe I'm not quite sure what the question means by supportive. So maybe if whoever posed that question could just be a little bit more kind of a bit more explicit about what they mean by support, that would be great. But because I don't want to presume that I'm understanding this question in a certain way. So if whoever posed that question can put a little bit more detail in there. But if it's about supportive, about kind of financial support, then as I've already mentioned, the Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies at the University of Wolverhampton is 100% funded by the university itself. It's not funded by any other organisation or any other body at all.
Opinderjit, Professor Fenich asked about the UK Punjab Heritage Association and whether you have any connection with them and thinking that this might be a good connection for your center.
Yeah, nice question from you, Lou Fennick. Thank you for that. So, I mean, we talk to one another, obviously, you know, with UK Punjab Heritage. But yes, absolutely, you know, doing something collaboratively with them is something that we could definitely discuss. I'm in contact with both Amandeep and Paramjeet, but Lou, if you know them, you know, on a personal level too, again, you know, maybe this is a conversation that we could carry on outside of this forum, in the sense of let's come up with some kind of suggestion, some kind of a proposal that maybe we can do together with UK PhD, because, you know, obviously, you know, we're both here in the UK, so it makes sense for us to be able to do things collaboratively as well.
Somebody wants to know what kind of prerequisites they would need before getting a PhD in Sikh Studies through the center. Is the Sikh Studies, the PhD actually through the center, or is it through the Department of Religious Studies and the center simply facilitates it?
It's through the center facilitates it, and the center would be on the official kind of correspondence as well. But the center, although it's kind of a cross faculty center, because I'm based in the Faculty of Arts, Business and Social Sciences, and the way that the PhD would work is, once students register for a PhD, they have a number of options in the sense of which discipline this is. So, for example, the one on politics would firmly fit within social sciences, for example. The one on mental health would fit within humanities and kind of, you know, health related subjects. So it depends on what the topic actually is.
Now, Opinderjit, there are several questions about a really big thing that's going on in India right now, and that's the Kisan movement. And as you know, it's been persistent now for a couple of weeks, and it's been described as the largest protest movement in history. And just this morning, I was on WhatsApp with a friend in Delhi, and he was saying that the roads now are totally closed, both from in Delhi, both going into the Punjab and also to the UP, and it takes hours just to get around, you know, going through, you know, farm roads to get around the stoppage. So it's a big deal. And this is not, you know, directly related to Sikh studies, but it is, of course, a larger Punjabi issue. Is this the kind of thing that you and your colleagues are kind of monitoring and keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about my colleagues as such, but you know, as a Punjabi, as a Sikh, you know, having family in Punjab who were affected by the new laws, etc. You know, yes, absolutely. You know, inevitably, I'm going to keep on top of what's happening out there, and yeah, wherever we can, you know, I'm showing my solidarity with the Kisan. You know, the sooner this issue is resolved, the sooner they can go home and get on with their lives, basically. So, you know, and here in the UK as well, you know, this is an issue actually that seems to have really united the Indian, the Punjabi, the Indian, you know, because the Kisan movement is not just about Punjabi Sikhs, it's about Kisans all over India. So again, you know, here in the UK, it has actually united the community in many ways. You know, in showing solidarity. So, you know, people that I know who would never have, you know, kind of, you know, on social media, etc., really got involved with anything in the past. This is something that they feel really emotionally kind of very concerned about, actually, and rightly so. You know, this is the livelihood of the Kisans, you know, the food basket of India that we're talking about. So yes, it's something that's very close to many people's hearts, including mine. you know, and we're all keeping an eye on social media, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting how something that may appear to be a local issue has global impact. And so people all over the world now are talking about it, not just among the diaspora community, but others as well. You can see there are different kinds of inequities. And you know, bringing that up, the reason why I was at Wolverhampton years ago is because, as you know, it's a great center for the Dalit community and the Ravi Das movement, which has had a Gurdwara or a center there. Do you consider the whole Ravi Das movement? Actually, Professor Ranki Ram from Punjabi University was asking about that in the questions. Do you include the Ravi Das Sabha as a part of Sikh studies or allied, at least Punjab studies? What's the connection there?
Okay, I mean, this is I personally find the whole, you know, identity politics, identity issues very, very interesting. And first of all, thank you, Professor Rankiram, for your question. I'd just like to share that Professor Rankiram has recently been appointed as visiting professor at the Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies, and other Sikh studies, Punjab studies scholars will soon be kind of, you know, on that list as well. We're just working through the paperwork. But yeah, going back to, you know, the whole Wolverhampton scenario, Mark, you know, your religion and social vision, you know, I think that's partly the reason that you came to Wolverhampton as well.
Yes.
You know, I use that all the way through my PhD as kind of a theoretical basis to be able to discuss what's happening within the Punjabi Dalit community. And again, this is where we have an advantage of being in Wolverhampton, because the Wolverhampton Ravidasi community is very, very active. Now, in terms of, you know, where I place them in the sense of, you know, Sikhs or non-Sikhs, this is an issue that's currently ongoing in the UK, especially. So as you'll be aware, you know, a number of Ravidasi places of worship, say, for example, in Italy, in Spain, have actually firmly, kind of visibly, very much strengthened the fact that they do not wish to be labelled as Sikhs. Here in the UK, the situation is not as clear cut. You know, in the last census of 2011, 11,000, which is a huge number of Ravidasis, actually ticked the other box in the religion category. You know, and maybe from, you know, especially from the conversations that I've had in the previous census, those 11,000 would have had no hesitation in ticking the Sikh tick box. And here in the UK, all Ravidasi places of worship that I'm aware of have the Guru Granth Sahib as the focus in their places of worship. Where that is going is, again, that is something that I've been researching over the last few years. You know, and sometimes talking to some people in the community, it's a question of when will the Guru Granth Sahib be replaced by Amrit Bani, Guru Ravidas, rather than if it will ever be replaced. Whereas with some other Ravidasis are absolutely adamant, you know, that no way will the Guru Granth Sahib ever be replaced. But in terms of identity, more and more of the younger generation identify as purely Ravidasiya. Not Ravidasiya Sikh, not Sikh Ravidasiya, but purely Ravidasiya. So again, you know, this is something that it'll be interesting to see. Next month, we have the next census coming to the UK. And once those results, especially in the religion tick box, in the religion section, are analysed, it'll be interesting to see, you know, what the dynamics are in that community.
Yeah, so in that regard, Sonia Dami is asking whether the Kisan movement might bring people together. She says Dalits, Mazdurs, Jats, and women traditionally have been on opposing sides, but the Kisan movement has had a way of bringing people together. Do you see that in UK as well?
I've not really done any research on that in the UK. You know, in the sense of, you know, going into the community, kind of, you know, again, at the moment, we can't really do any of that because, you know, we're in a lockdown here in the UK. So, you know, kind of, you know, talking to people physically face to face is quite restricted. But I don't really see much. To be honest with you, I can't answer that from an academic point of view because I haven't really done the research on that. But it's great to see, you know, from what we see on you know, through the various news reports, through the Sikh channels, etc., of, you know, people coming together regardless of caste, regardless of gender, faith, no faith. It's great to see that happening, in the sense that, you know, this is about a shared issue, you know, and you're kind of, you know, whatever labels or whatever caste, etc., you belong to, doesn't really seem to be coming into the equation. And as Sonia says, you know, that's good to see. But whether that is replicated here in the UK, I possibly can't say, because I don't know.
We have a bunch of questions now, again, about the center and about your academic program. Someone asked whether they could do an MA on a part-time basis. Do you have to be a full-time student, or is there any arrangement where people can do it while they're holding out a job or something of that nature?
Yes, absolutely. So the MA Sikh Studies is available as a part-time. So it would be 2 years a part-time course, and it's 1 full year as a full-time course. So again, I'll put my email address in the chat box, and please do get in touch, and you know, I can give you the entry requirements, I can give you an insight into the modules, etc. Absolutely.
Somebody's asking about a Punjabi. Do you have a Punjabi MA, MA in Punjabi Studies?
Not at the moment, Mark. So this is something that we were hoping to have introduced this year, but because of the pandemic, we needed to put a pause on some things. But this is something definitely that we hope to be able to introduce either in the coming academic year or in the academic year after that. We have found that actually there is a need for us to have an MA in Punjabi.
Yeah, Rup Dillon has several questions regarding that, and whether Punjabi literature is being taught, and she's concerned that whether it's only limited to historical studies, or is the whole field of Punjabi literature being explored.
So thanks for your question, Roop. So Roop has written a number of novels geared towards the younger generation in Punjabi, where he uses superheroes, etc. So again, we're thinking of developing a number of courses with Roop, in the sense that, you know, engaging especially the younger generation with wanting to read Punjabi. And again, this is where that proposal that I talked about earlier on, in the sense of, you know, developing, you know, some kind of online resources to be able to learn Punjabi would be really useful. Can you repeat the second part of that question, Mark? Sorry.
Just whether modern Punjabi literature will be taught to students.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, the MA in Punjabi hasn't been finalised. It hasn't been written in stone. So again, you know, any suggestions that Roop or anybody else has, in the sense of, you know, what they feel should be in a MA Punjabi course, by all means, you know, just please reach out via email, and we can discuss the possibilities, because at the end of the day, any course that we introduce, if it's MA Punjabi, it has to actually speak to those who want to do it. So if we're putting a suggestion forward and nobody really wants to do it, it's a bit of a wasted effort. But if we can engage the community, if we can engage individuals in the sense of what should be in there, then that's all the better.
Yeah, Gurpreet Bhatia is asking about, should people ask, the questions keep on coming up, and as soon as they come up, and then the list disappears. Yeah, I was asking about the center's work with Gurdwaras from across the UK in terms of projects around training. Is that, I guess they mean for like a grunty? Is that what they have in mind?
So I think what Gurpreet is referring to there is something that I mentioned earlier on around we're at the moment we're working on an initiative where we can work more closely with the Gurdwara here in the UK, in the sense that, you know, how do we address the needs of the younger generation? How do we bring Gurdwaras in line with the 21st century? And what kinds of initiative, what kind of teaching, learning styles, you know, do we need to be able to introduce to the teachers in the various Gurdwara classes, in the schools that are attached to Gurdwara as well? Again, this is something that had to be paused because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic. But yeah, absolutely, Gurpreet, that is something that we need to be taking forward, and we will be taking forward. And with your support, Gurpreet, which you've shown us in the past as well, it would be great to engage you with that as well, and anybody else as well who's here in this event today. If you feel that there are any particular issues, challenges that really should be addressed in order to be able to bring the 350 so Gurdwara that we have here in the UK in line with the 21st century, then again, please do reach out. The centre is about community engagement as well. It's not just an academic centre, so it's very much about making an impact on the community.
Yeah, in that regard, Satpal is asking whether there are any plans on studies of Guru Ravidas.
So a great deal of my research is based around the Ravidasi community and looking at kind of identity politics, etc. So yeah, absolutely. There's nothing that's stopping us, Satpal, from doing some studies or some in-depth work on Guru Ravidas. Again, if the community, if individuals, if organizations feel that is something that we should be doing, then absolutely, again, this is something that we can carry on outside of this forum, in the sense of what do you expect that to look like, and whether we can realistically deliver it.
John Doe wants to know how he can join, how he can sign up for a PhD. And I assume that you have a website for that, right?
We do, yes. So Jeet, everybody's welcome to take a PhD in Sikh Studies or Punjabi Studies. The more research we have, the more we can strengthen the discipline of Sikh Studies. So again, email me, discuss the ideas that you have, and yeah, absolutely, you'd be most welcome as a PhD student at the Centre for Sikh and Panjabi Studies.
So questions about your wider connection with Indian universities, and do you have joint projects? You said you formed MRUs, Memorandums of Understanding, to do what? Do you have an exchange of scholars? Do you have students going there? What's the nature of these connections?
So again, Mark, unfortunately, because of the situation that everybody is in at the moment, a number of things have had to be paused. But one of those initiatives for signing the MOU was absolutely just that, was to have an exchange of scholars, was to have our students going there, their students coming here, doing various projects together in terms of research, writing together. All of that is in the pipelines, in the sense of, again, doing some kind of a project around, whether this sense of, especially amongst, Indian Sikhs or Punjabi Sikhs, as to, what that sense of, is there still a sense of home, and the diaspora, or has that actually, is that dialogue not really relevant, in the 21st century? So we are planning to do a research project around that as well, where we talk to people, we collect that qualitative data and then analyze it in the sense of trying to paint a picture now, currently, rather than using books, etc., that are 30 years old, which may no longer be applicable, in the sense of what the behaviors and attitudes now.
Yeah, all of us are traveling by Zoom these days, it seems. So in some ways, it's a lot easier than going to an airport. All you have to do is get up, and you don't even have to wear pants, just as long as you have a nice shirt. And I'm wearing pants. I don't want to confuse you, but it's easy, and yet it's not the same. Of course, it's actually being able to physically chat with somebody and be in their homes and to see the students face to face. And I think we all long for a time when we can actually interact globally in person. Somebody's asking about the center, and publications are coming up. I don't know whether that means your own publications, but this is a center putting out publications of any sort, brochures or research publications or anything of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of research publications, I have an edited book with Professor Graham Harvey coming out in October this year. That's in press.
On what? What's the subject of the book?
The subject is religion and the sense of place. So it's not restricted to Sikh studies, but it's about kind of faith and what the sense of place kind of means within all of that. And there is a very good chapter on the Sikh perspective in that as well. I'm working with Doris Jacobs at the moment. We're working on an edited book on global Sikhs. So, you know, hopefully that will be out, you know, pretty soon. And then personally, I'm working on a monograph as well, looking at kind of, you know, 21st century issues and the Sikhs. And our research students are very actively engaged in writing publications. So one of the PhD students, Narinder Bring, she had an article published in Prashara's special edition of Religions just before Christmas. And that's a fantastic article, and it takes the reader all through her methodology of using autoethnography. And then the other students are working on similar things as well. So, you know, at the moment, those will be geared towards journal publications. But hopefully, as a long-term goal, we'll be able to have an edited collection of all the current research that's taking place in the UK. You know, and not just from our students, but from other students as well. You know, so there's a real bright young scholar as well, who's at LSC. So, you know, she's been doing some guest lectures at the centre as well for us. So it'd be great, I think, to be able to put all of this research together in one place, in the sense of, you know, the current generation of scholarship in Sikh studies. You know, who will be the next, you know, the leaders. You know, once we've all kind of, you know, given up and retired, etc.
Well, you already are. You already have established your position as a leading center for Sikh studies in UK and really around the world. And it just, you have our enormous admiration. You know, and what you're just now saying about how the book that you're editing, it's not entirely about Sikh studies, but it shows the importance of the Sikh position alongside other religious traditions. That's a really important contribution. And that's one of the significant things about the development of Sikh studies, not just to highlight the tradition itself and the various aspects of it, but also to make its place, to show the prominence of Sikhism and Sikhi within the entirety of the global religious community. You know, years ago at a conference in 1976, I wrote the lead essay for the book called Sikhism, the Forgotten Tradition. And it was based on a survey I did of books on world religion and comparative religion, almost none of which at the time included Sikhism. It was just kind of dropped out, even though Sikhs is numerically, or there are more Sikhs in the world than Jews. And yet Sikhism doesn't appear, or didn't appear at that time. It does now. And it does now in part because, of course, the prominence of the Sikhs as a community around the world and the importance that they've played in all aspects of society, not the least of which is politics in Canada and now in the United States. Sikhs are positions of importance and of prominence, and people know who Sikhs are, but also because of the scholarship and because of the work of people like you. In putting your foot down and establishing Sikhism as something that is an important area of scholarship and research and attention, both for the community and for the university. And so you have our admiration, Opinderjit, for everything that you've done and you are doing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mark. It means a lot. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of this discussion. I know we didn't answer all the questions, but you can contact Opinderjit directly and make sure you check out their website and see all of the wonderful things that they're doing. So we'll see everybody else in 2 weeks for the next webinar. Bye-bye.